the real interest I have is in kind of readjusting our sensibilities so that what we love is actually attached more to something that's worth loving.
And you're listening to Musically Speaking. I'm Jared Ritchie. In today's special long form episode, I bring you a discussion I had here a little while back with no stranger to this podcast, Maestro John Mason Hodges. And I trust that it will be fruitful and enjoyable to you as it was to me to have this conversation. So without any further ado, I take you to my special conversation with Maestro Hodges. Well, I'm here with John Hodges, my dear friend, mentor, and a guy that I would just sit and talk with for hours and hours, but we live 5 hours away. So here we are in the same room this week. John Hodges is the maestro, currently the music director of the Monroe Symphony Orchestra here in Northeast Louisiana. He's also the director, the founder of the Center for Western Studies in Memphis, Tennessee, and more recently, he's been helping us out as an instructor, faculty for the Redeemer School of the Arts, dealing with our students in the area of beauty and aesthetics. And so, anytime I can sit down with John and pull some threads on music, on art, on aesthetics, and how Christians should think about these things, it's a real treat. And so, John, thank you for sitting down with me and chatting
Oh, it's
today.
always good to see you, Jared. I love talking about these subjects too. So you have to shut me up if I go on too long.
Oh, far from it. That's why God created bigger hard drives and SD cards for recording such uh,
Right,
vast
right.
amounts of interest and knowledge. But I have on this podcast some interviews from folks from time to time on weightier matters as it comes to music and art. And for Christians, we are just inundated with so much music, so much art, and I think something that you and I have talked about before. It's very tempting to be overwhelmed and therefore
Mhm.
to not have well articulated, reasoned positions of wisdom when it comes to both how to listen to music and how to view art and literature and architecture. What would you say to someone listening to this podcast who is an appreciator of good music, they would say? How would you encourage them towards a more skillful and yet not snobbish way to think about
Right,
music and the arts in their
right.
day to day lives as
Yeah,
a
it's so
start?
easy, isn't it, to become kind of snobbish about it. Well, I only listen to this or I only listen to that or something.
Right.
That attitude doesn't have any place in our Christian lives. Um, we we need to we need to think about what it is we're listening to, and it's hard to do in a day and age where we're overwhelmed, like you say, with so much music. Everywhere you go, you hear some music. Just thinking about this with your students, I was at the gas station pumping gas, and they're pumping music, piping music out at your car, because you're afraid that they're I guess they're afraid that you'll go a moment without being entertained somehow, in your
Mm.
life. Why there are two ways really that you can go if you want to keep people from listening to music. You can do two things. You can either rob them of all music so they never hear any, or you can overwhelm them with music all the time until they get to the point where they can't listen to it anymore. And I think that's what's happening now. We're kind of training ourselves not to listen. And if we're training ourselves not to listen, what happens is when something worth listening to comes by, we don't have the tools or the consciousness or the whatever to be able to make sense of it. And that's a loss, I think. That's a terrific loss. What you're doing here with your students is so good. You're making them analyze music. You're making them compose some music, even, and you're teaching them solfege, so they are actually learning to read music
Mm.
and sing it and play it, and that's a rarity in the
Mm.
world. You don't maybe know how rare it is, but most young people don't get that kind of education.
Yeah, well, it seems you have your head down, and you're not really always thinking about the bigger picture. But one of the in the day to day of teaching music literacy, I think it's probably somewhere way back down the line when we first ran into each other, 5 or 6 years ago. Uh, I was just thinking, wait a minute, we can't have a musically mature culture if we don't have literacy.
That's right.
I mean,
That's
I
right.
was convinced that we needed literacy, but I think somewhere along the lines, it struck me that you're you can teach people to, of course, to make music, to read music, as you say, and we're trying to do that in the ways that the Lord's given us. But you can't really get to the next level, right, until you can actually have maturity. Maturity, I should say, is not attainable without literacy. And so it
Right.
seems almost too obvious to even need to say, but it's really the starting point if we're going to enjoy good music. And I'm hopeful that our kids here are able to see that, and then it becomes other temptations and other sanctification of how do you address music, and now all of a sudden they're the haves in a world of
Right.
have-nots.
Yeah, so
So
true.
it's interesting to see that temptation in the students. But for the person out there listening, they don't always know what to do with music, and I think the average listener might be reduced to evaluating a piece of music, a symphony, probably not as much, or but of something they hear on the radio, or an art song, or a pop piece, or a rock song, or a singer songwriter thing, or this or that, based on the language they do know,
Right.
which is English, or maybe they know a foreign language. Would you talk a little bit about that? About
Mhm.
how um, music itself can speak. And I
Right.
think we don't think it can, by
Yeah.
and large, if we're honest with ourselves and clearly analyzing the situation. We think music only really has meaning if the words that the music is transmitting is positive, or, say, Christian, or what we would therefore call good.
Yeah.
Can you talk some about that?
Well, yeah, the we'd like to think that the words are the content of the music, but without words, music has the ability to express things. And it's harder to put your finger on, mind you. I get that. And we can debate about them, and people do. But the reality is that music has the ability to interpret words because it has meaning to it itself. I use the example of Somewhere Over the Rainbow
Mm.
in a lecture at L'Abri one time. And I was saying, here's the lyric: somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land. Oh dear, now I've forgotten it. There's a land
That I heard
that I've
of.
heard of once in a lullaby. There you go. Thank you. Um, what if I did that in a kind of heavy metal way, and I pretend to play the guitar, and go somewhere over the rainbow, like
Jimi
that.
Hendrix a la, yeah.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. So why would it be better to do it the way the original song is? Well, one thing is that there's some tone painting in the melody, right? So a rainbow is a kind of a arching thing, right? So what do you have is at the beginning of the song is this octave leap, right? Somewhere da yi da da yi da da yi da. Those are like the bands of a rainbow. So the music is actually imitating something of the meaning of the words, right? Whereas that heavy metal thing, if you like heavy metal music, you might be okay with it, but there's less of a connection between what you're saying and how you're saying it, maybe.
Mm.
So music has the ability to do better. You can say this is better than that in a meaningful way. You can pick almost any song that's well crafted and do that with it. I used to do the "Oh Little Town of Bethlehem." I'd play the guitar and do "Oh Little Town of Bethlehem, how still we see thee lie above thy deep and dreamless sleep. The silent stars go by, yet in thy dark street shineth the everlasting light." And then I'd stop, and then go like I'd pretend like I didn't know. I got lost in the song or something. Oh, how does it go again? I don't know. And somebody in the audience would always try and sing it. Yet in thy dark street shineth. Oh, that's right, that's right. So I'd play it that way, and I'd say, why is that better? Well, it has to do with the connection of the music to the words, right? Because that word "yet" is so important. Changes the mood of the line. It changes the harmony underneath it. You remember, and suddenly you have "yet in thy dark streets shineth the everlasting light," which is a point that is profound, makes your head explode if you think about it.
Right.
And so the music reflects that, in that line that changes. Well, you can look at a million different pieces of music like that and find that there's something in the music that assists. It's not just the words. The words obviously are important in anything that has text, but the way you craft that music to express those things is essential. And so that means that there's a meaning in the music. It's in the rhythm, it's in the melody, it's in the harmony, it's in the way you choose instruments for which bits play what. And suddenly there's a whole craft to composing that if you don't know about it, you don't know to look for it, and so things go right by you.
Yeah. And that's really interesting because we don't know music, and so therefore we don't know what to listen for. We don't
Right.
know for that built-in extra amening of this part of the song or
Yeah.
this part of the music, amening maybe the text or maybe the idea that the composer has. And you as a composer and an arranger, the average person, I guess part of our job is to convince them and to cultivate in them what we would, I guess, would you call active listening
Yes.
more than just passive.
Yes.
We have such a passive music in the background amusing us to death.
Yes. Yes.
What are some of the ways that you do that? Obviously, pointing it out, signposting for folks
Right.
what they're listening for, so it doesn't feel alien.
Well,
what are
yeah,
some-
you're really doing for them the little bit that I was just doing is a way to get people a kind of a focus on an aspect of music that they don't usually think about, and if they can get a hold of that idea, then they start looking for that in other pieces that they listen to, and suddenly they're engaging at a level that they hadn't been before. And when a piece doesn't repay that analysis, that kind of focused listening, we're bored by it. We're more bored, let's say, by it. We're not as entertained by it. And
Yeah.
which is this kind of the real interest I have is in kind of readjusting our sensibilities so that what we love is actually attached more to something that's worth loving.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think at the essence of the source of the center of classical education is just that idea that we're training sensibilities to attach our affections to things that are worth loving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing as you were saying that that popped in my mind is the notion of getting them to love. Uh, Scott Annual, our friend, says recovering the lost tools of loving.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very
you know,
good.
He says, in a real sense, that is the call of education, not the lost tools of learning, as we hear repeated again and again from
Sure.
Dorothy Sayers. But yeah, really getting them to love it. And there's something to be said about you can't love what you don't know,
No,
what you don't
exactly
converse
right.
with.
That's right.
And when you're listening to music, or when you're you and I were talking, you don't just tell the listeners that are out there, you don't just listen to music in the background. Tell a little bit about that. That they might listen in the background while they're doing dishes. I would suspect you don't do that.
I don't. I don't, and it's maybe a flaw in me, but I can't do it. I just can't. I liken it to, imagine you go to a restaurant and you're an architect and you go and you sit down and the tablecloth has these designs of these buildings and bridges and things, all on it. And you can't not look at them, You're there, well, gee, I never would have put the bathroom there. It'd have to be on this side, Oh, whoa, I should be talking to my friends, I'm distracted by, well, that's how I feel in a restaurant when the music is playing over, in my head. I'm going, well, I hadn't heard that chord progression. Oh, sorry, I was listening to your telling me about your mother. Um, so I don't usually do that, and I suppose maybe it's lack of discipline on my mind. I don't know, but I can't do it.
Yeah.
But what I think it does for me, the pro part of it is that it allows me to focus my attention on music when I'm listening to it fully. I can
Mm.
focus fully on the music when I'm
Yeah.
listening, and I think that's better. My temptation is this. My temptation is to be entertained by all the technology that I have, my
Mm.
phone or my television or my, streaming service, movies or whatever. And I think, well, if I have 10 minutes, I'd like to listen to this podcast while I'm doing this or that, driving the car or whatever.
Right.
And even that is not really healthy for me. I'd rather do one thing and focus on it than to do 12 things and just be inundated by information that goes in one ear and basically goes out the other ear.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
T.S. Eliot in the Four Quartets has a line, "We are distracted from distraction by distraction."
That is the truth.
And that's what I feel like we're doing. And so I don't want to do that with music since I have to
Right.
work with that.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned this to me before, maybe even to the students here at Geneva when you were just visiting with them about that. One of the ways that the tempter and ways that we are distracted with either by censorship was what you said to the students, but also like removing something completely, but also inundating and so overwhelming it they're almost paralyzed with what to do with
Yeah.
music or
Yeah.
what to do with art. And also to desensitize them to the glories of it, right?
And look at the temptation then to fall back on the purely subjective aspect of it
Mm.
all. If I can stop my engagement, my aesthetic engagement, objective engagement with it, then I can just let it flow over me. And if I like it, I like it. If I don't like it, I don't like it. It doesn't matter. I'm not thinking about that kind of coordination of my sensibilities with the music. And I feel like that's go back to newscasts and things. We want to my wife and I like to go at night. We turn on the news and we watch the several different cable channels to kind of get a fix on what's going on in the world.
Mhm.
And to a degree, that's worthwhile. But I realize 9/10 of what it is I'm told, I can't do anything about. I can't really if if South Korea and North Korea are fighting each other, I'm not involved. I'm not, I can pray for them. That's
Right.
about all. But I don't, the whole, the uh, fights, the wars between, what was it, Congo and I forget what country next door to it that President Trump has been actually working on getting solved, or between Pakistan and India. That's
Right.
another. I think, well, that's fascinating, but it's so far beyond my realm of doing. I can't do anything about it. It's just information.
Mm.
I remember thinking about the fictional character Sherlock Holmes, and somebody asked him if the world were round or flat, and he said, "I don't care." And they said, "Well, surely you want to know." And he said, "No, it doesn't have any effect on me whatsoever. Either it doesn't matter." Now, I'm not advocating for the flat. Don't get me wrong.
Of
But
course.
what I'm saying is, he said, "I have only so much like hard drive space in my
Yeah.
head, and that's a fact that isn't of any use to me.
Mm.
I'm going to live my life the same way, whether it's round or flat. Don't bother me with that. And I thought, yeah, there's something to understanding your limitations and focusing on things that you really can do something about.
Mm.
And I can't do much about what most of the news that goes on.
Yeah, and so therefore,
It's like that with music.
of course, and so if you only have so many hours a day and so much intellectual bandwidth, as you say,
Right.
if we're going to form our loves and affections, then we need to take serious about, not in a pretentious way or in some obnoxious way, but we really need to not be flippant about what we take in. If music can be likened to food and a diet, no one's calling for a rigid, one-sided, limited diet, but
Right.
maybe a balanced diet.
Right.
So, someone listening here or someone that you've talked to, I'm often asked, as I know you are, on different interviews or different Q&As and things, what would be the playlist that you would give to people? And I shy away from giving them particular,
Hmm.
a rigid list, although that's like tell me which one is your favorite kid, like, I don't know that we want
Right,
to go there,
right.
but I do try to point them to a period, and I started saying, riffing off of Lewis and say, listen to music outside of your time,
Uh-huh.
and
Right,
to take
right.
that.
That's a good idea.
And then more specifically, listening to pre-enlightenment music. Would
Uh-huh.
you agree with that? And could you give a little bit of flesh on the bones of why might that be helpful to the listener to listen to music, early quote unquote music,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
pre-enlightenment, so to speak,
Well,
or some caveats if you agree or disagree?
I I I guess I like the idea of listening to things outside of your own time period. I think that's really essential, especially popular music,
Right.
especially. But you know that I run into young people today that know more popular music from my teen years than I know of theirs
Hmm.
in their teen years. So part of that is this whole Spotify kind of historical. What's the word I want? Like a conglomerate of all the possible songs that you can
At your
dig into
fingertips.
and right at your fingertips exactly. And so they know some songs from the 70s that I'm surprised they know, for example, Jim Croce or something. Um but um but listening to things that are outside of um your time period is a good idea, like Lewis says about reading old books. But I'm a little hesitant to be sort of chronologically snobbery about it, chronological snobbery about it. There isn't a golden age exactly, and there's not. I don't want to denigrate the composers that are working today, and I don't want to denigrate the composers that were working in the 1700s. But if you if you can learn the language of those older periods, it's like learning another language. It's like learning French or Latin or something. You expand your ability to make sense of things. And what's more, you begin to see that everybody built on the shoulders of the people that went before them.
Hmm.
And so if you get to know some of the older things, you begin to see why uh, Gershwin wrote the way he did because he was building so much on, people before him, and um, it's a well, it's like reading books, I guess. And knowing history a little bit. It's just a good idea to learn the language of those older pieces. And what I find is that when I better know the language of, I'll tell you a quick story. You got time for a story?
Yeah.
I when I was music director of the church in Memphis, I would have a Sunday afternoon concert every once in a while where I just ask somebody to come in and do a solo recital, a little piano and instrument thing for people. Well, one of our parishioners there is an excellent cellist. I mean, really world class, fine cellist, and he knows the Bach six suites for cello. And so I asked him to come in and do a couple of those, and he had them all memorized. He did a fantastic job. Well, that was a concert at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I knew that I had to go and rehearse a few sort of Christian contemporary songs for my evening service. We had a kind of the high church kind of morning service. We had a kind of a more popular evening service that I inherited, and so I knew I had to go and rehearse these things, and I was just blown away by this Bach concert. And but I know, gosh, now I got to go learn. I got to teach them this or that. And the funny thing was the opposite. When I went to that rehearsal for the pop music, I liked it better. I
Hmm.
found something in it that was worth, performing and worth preserving and so on. And I think it was because I was able to relate to music in general better because I had had this experience with this Bach concert.
Hmm.
So it's tempting to want to do the opposite, to say, well, now that I know Bach, I don't want to have anything to do with anything else.
Right.
But those are human expressions.
Sure.
And what we as Christians want is to appreciate the experience, the expression rather, of human beings in song and encourage it, and in instrumental music. And even if they're not Bach, none of us is, right?
Truly.
So why not find a way to appreciate what is good about everything that you're looking at
Yeah.
and listening to, and point it out. It's a little bit, I think it's the application of that Philippians 4 passage, whatsoever is good, whatsoever is of good report, whatsoever is noble and worth pursuing, think on those things.
Yeah.
And so nothing is unbroken, nothing is sinless. So why not find what's good about the thing that's in front of you and emphasize it and bring it up and glorify it for the sake of the Lord?
Yeah, so we would avoid chronological snobbery. Maybe a better way to get at it would be to maybe couch it in terms of reading books outside of your time, listening to music outside of your time as a bit of a corrective because of maybe we've gone too far one direction. Would that be a better way to couch
I
it?
think
Or
that's fair to say. I think
with your
every
point still holding true, it just strikes me that yet I may still be falling into the chronological trap.
well,
the
it's easy
snobbery
to
trap.
do. I think it's easy to do. We either say, well, what's new is better than what's old, or we react and say what's old is better than what's new. But I'm not sure either of those is really a very safe place.
Right.
But to know all of it is worthwhile, and you learn to appreciate everything better, I think, by knowing a much broader spectrum of music than simply what you like in your own particular period.
Yeah. Um, One thing I've enjoyed over the years talking with you about is your ability to go, at a piece of music, at a piece of art, a piece of architecture, in a cathedral, or some aspect, and really kind of um, exposit, talk about it, help interpret it for
Mhm.
someone who may not be able to interact with it with immediacy because of either lack of training or lack of music ability or understanding or just a history.
Yeah.
When you're talking with audiences, when you are encouraging folks, um, what is it that you find the most challenging in trying to get someone who is listening? What's the most challenging thing to get across, or what do you usually say to yourself in a Q&A or a lecture when it comes to thinking about these things? What is it the thing that if all else fails, I need to get this point across?
Mm.
What's the cultural pulse that you sense either with young people or adults, when it comes to music and thinking about the arts? I mean, you as a conductor and a composer, what is it that you find the thing that you're having to come back to again and again?
Mhm. Mhm. That's an interesting question.
Oh, I've left you speechless.
I, I'm a conductor by main training, and I think conductors are ultimately interpreters,
Hmm.
and and so I think that's where my heart lives. My gift, if I have a gift, it's there. It's in trying to figure out what it is that this work is saying. Architecture, music, it doesn't matter. Poetry, something. What is it saying? And then how can I, as a performer, or as the leader of the orchestra or whatever, get that across to the audience? And that then, if I'm theorizing about it, if I'm lecturing about it, the thing I want to try and get across are the tools that make it possible for them to do some of that same interpretation. And so I talk at length about the six elements of art, or of music rather, six elements of music: rhythm, melody, harmony, form, texture, and timbre. Those six things. And if you can create categories in your head about those six things, and then start asking probing questions about what you're listening to in those categories. What's he doing with rhythm? What's he doing with melody? What's he doing with harmony? What is the form of the thing? What instruments is he using? What timbres is he calling on? And what textures? How many lines are being sung at once? Is it polyphonic? Is it monophonic? Whatever. And once you have those six in your mind, somebody said one time that when your mind gets stretched, it doesn't ever go back to its old shape.
Hmm.
There's a permanent part to it that gets stretched, and that's good. So once you have those categories in your mind, your ability to relate to the music includes those. Whereas before you have those, your ability to relate to it is almost purely subjective. That is, how do I feel when I come in contact with this music? Does it make me happy? Does it make me sad? Does it entertain me in some way? And that's okay. That's part of it. That's
Sure.
part of our experience of music. It's beauty is both objective and subjective together.
Right.
So, but sadly, I think our day has lost its ability on that objective side to such a degree that we can't think except in the subjective, and so we don't think to think. I mean, it's like, if you don't, it's like you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Right. And we're all like that about something.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing that I try and lay out for my students, put in my lectures, that gives them categories or tools kind of to be able to unpack things on the objective side. And then I put the little seed in their minds to say, put off asking the question, do I like this, for a while until you've done this other, and asked about what's he doing with melody, what's he doing with harmony. And then the lovely question, why did he do it that way? And with great composers, there are answers for that,
Right.
And then later on, after you've done some of that, then ask yourself, do I like it?
Yeah.
What is it I like about it? And so keep that in there. That's what I do.
It seems like is the question that is asked first by our
Right.
generation, and to your point, it should be the question we ask last.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
as a corrective, maybe not as a objective for all of time, but in this day and age where the subjective, we're in no short supply of people being able to subjectively discern music. But I would say also uninformed way. If you don't know music, and therefore the music business knows you don't know music,
Yeah.
we're going to write music that the unlearned musician can like, and
Yeah.
therefore it needs to be very low level in complexity. It needs to be rhythmic. It needs to be simple in certain areas, because the goal is not to engage your head and your heart and to make you chew on it like a good novel might be.
Yeah.
The goal is to make you laugh, to make you cry, and to do so with as little work on your part. Would you agree with that statement? Or?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the characteristic of most popular music. It's intended to be easily accessible, right? Easily have an easy in. If you, it's also international. It's inter. What's the word I want? International, I guess. The latest sort of Britney Spears song or Michael Jackson song from way back or whatever is as easy to access if you're from India as it is from the United States, basically. There's no geographical or ethnical, not ethical, but ethnical aspect to it, right?
Yeah.
But folk music is different. Folk music requires that you know something about the geographical and the ethnic understanding. American Indian basket weaving is a kind of a unique talent, and you have to know something about it to be able to appreciate it. Same thing, Appalachian folk music, or something, or Hungarian folk music or whatever. So, but popular music transcends that in a sense. It doesn't speak in that geographical, locational kind of aspect. It speaks to everybody, anywhere, and it's done on purpose. It's meant to, exactly, and it's successful.
Right.
I mean, Michael Jackson wrote some very catchy things, you know,
Right.
and they're fun and they're energetic and they're a lot of, you know. So anyway, all that to say is I think the nature of popular music on that kind of business model level is to make it as attractive to as many people as possible.
And so we need Christians who can kind of wake up to the fact that the music around them, if they don't give it any thought or any careful consideration on their listening habits, they're probably not going to be encouraged to be more active listeners.
Right.
And they're probably, like you said, we don't know what we don't see.
They're almost discouraged from being active
Well, that's
listeners.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost
Talk more
discouraged.
about that. Yeah.
Well, it's just that you really don't want people to be too discerning about it because that makes them look for things that aren't there
Right.
in the music, right?
Yeah. Door number
Um,
one has nothing behind it. It's just
Yeah, that's
just
right.
a beat and a
And
repetitive chorus.
and
maybe.
there's this ubiquitous chord progression that everybody uses. 6 4
Or, yeah.
1 5.
Yeah. Yeah.
6 4 1 5, and it's over and over and over and over, and you can write all sorts of different melodies on top of it and ad lib things along the way, but it's like it's part of our fabric of our lives now, and it's so cringy to me.
Yeah,
Um,
there's videos I've seen online where these guys are just all these different pop songs, and they're just playing those four chords
yes,
and just going song to song to song, and it's shocking after the 10th song off the charts that everybody would know
yeah, it's
that it's
exactly
the
right.
same chords with no variation.
You think, well, is there no creativity then going on here? Why don't we think of chord progressions that actually?
But why would we? When do we hear um, an exposition and a development in another key
Right.
and a minor variation on it? I mean, this is the symphonic palette. You know, this is the grand choral textures. These are the melodies that have to take, you know, an hour to hear over the course of four movements or whatever.
Yeah.
We don't have a generation. We have a microwave generation. We don't
Yes.
have the musical patience, or as we said, to beat the dead horse, we don't have the literacy to really engage. And I think just my encouragement a lot of the time is just, hey, work on expanding your musical patience, work on listening more broadly and deeply and actively. Don't be a snob or a jerk about it, of course, but realize that there is a pattern around us, whether you see it or not, and that is just what you said: is to not listen too deeply, you know. I mean, it's the soda versus wine, or
Right.
the coffee, you know, versus a soda, or a beer versus a soda. There's no trouble in learning to appreciate a soda
That's right.
as it is a beer or
Doesn't
coffee or a
cause-
fine glass of wine.
That's so true.
Yeah.
That's a great example.
And those things are harder to make than soda too, even just in the complexity
You
of
have
how
to
it's
be
put
patient
together.
to make wine, don't you?
Exactly.
It doesn't just happen. You have to
Mhm.
give it time and know the techniques and so on. I was just thinking about some popular songs in the last 70 years.
And we love
that-
some good pop. We
Yeah.
love it. We share a love for James Taylor
Oh, my
and
gosh,
Jim
he's-
Croce in
does
this office.
interesting
You know,
things.
lest the listener think that it's
Yeah,
Bach
this is-
or Haydn or bust for us. you
That's
know?
right. That's right. It's exactly right. I was just thinking about the song Wichita Lineman. Do you know that song?
I do. Yeah.
That's a fascinating piece of music, harmonically speaking. Just look at the chords and it's really interesting. Another one is do you remember the first what was his name? Charlie and the Chocolate Factory guy.
Gene Wilder, the actor.
In the
Yeah.
Gene Wilder movie, there's a tune that he sings da da dee da
Oh,
da
yes,
dee da
Pure
da dee
Imagination.
da 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 dee.
Yes.
It's really wonderful.
Yeah, it's like a
it-
major 7 chord. That whole it
Yeah,
feels
yeah.
with that,
And it has marvelous harmonic modulations in it and so on,
man, yeah.
that Prokofiev would have been kind of proud of, I think. But so people who craft that stuff are capable. They're really capable.
Right.
Erb, isn't it? Not David Erb, our friend, but oh dear. I can't think of his name now, but the guy who wrote Wichita Lineman. Anyway, if you do a harmonic analysis sometime of that song, it's really fascinating where he goes and what happens and where a sudden change to a chord that you don't expect and what word is it on, and
Right.
like that. It's fascinating. So craft is part of it, and let's just go back to that and not
Mm.
just rely on cliches of 6/4. What did I say? 6/4 1/5 over and over again, which are tedious and boring.
Yeah, you think about craftsmanship and crafting of a good melody, crafting of a wonderful meal.
Yeah.
It's more things put in typically when we like it, not less.
Yes.
So it's not like, boy, this was a great hamburger. No one ever says that if it's just got a piece of meat and a bun on it.
Yeah.
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 If they say this was an artisan hamburger, if there
Yeah.
is such a thing, which I'm sure there is,
I'm sure there
where
is.
it's not just those two things. It actually has more things put into it,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
less.
Yeah.
But then you've got to have the faculty and the ability to appreciate those. Maybe you don't, if it's really good, you don't go, I taste just the right amount of onion in this burger patty. You're not probably not thinking that consciously,
Mhm.
but the sum of that, you may not think on the chord progression in a wonderful song, but hopefully somebody thought of a wonderful chord progression and
Yes.
melody
Yes.
so that you could just have the enjoyment of it. But still, we've got to build up our tolerance, our ability to listen, and at the same time, uh, I feel the need to kind of disabuse people who take the intellectual lazy route to say, "Oh, you just like all classical music. You don't."
Oh, right.
Yeah, but we
Right,
love
right,
good
right.
food. I love blues and jazz and
Sure.
and
Sure.
I love the, like you said, singer songwriters of my dad's era. I loved
Mhm.
and my
Mhm.
uncle's era. Thus my love of Croce and James Taylor and all of that.
Sure.
But
Sure.
we've got to develop this uh, improved listening habits and awareness, and just, I guess, even as a start, would you say just the desire to want to listen more deeply? Would you add to that, or what would you say?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, again, at the risk of sounding like we're just being sort of
Statler and Waldorf on the Muppets,
yes, exactly, exactly. That we're I don't know what is that Mr. Croach, the dilettante hater. I don't want to become a dilettante and say, well, I only listen to this or that.
Right.
That's not it. In fact, I think of music as organized sound,
Mm.
crafted sound, and I want our composers to have as much of a free range as they need to draw on whatever sounds they need to be able to express the thing that they want to express. See, but I think if our diet, go back to the food analogy for a minute, if our diet was only soda and candy and candy canes or whatever candy, what is it that the elf says? There are 4 kinds of food: candy and candy canes and candy corn and syrup, I think he said.
Yes.
If that's your entire intake of food, not only do you not get the benefit of all these other kinds of food, but your palate is adjusted
Mm.
so that when you try something that isn't one of those sweet things, you'll be disgusted with it or disappointed or something by it because it doesn't give you what it is. If you try and judge a Prokofiev symphony by the same standards that you judge the latest Michael Jackson song,
Yes.
it's going to be boring for
Right.
you, right? You're going to say, "Oh, I don't see any point in listening to that." And besides, it's 18 times too long.
Right.
And you're asking me to listen to a 40-minute symphony when I really want a 3-minute, pop song.
Yeah, you mentioned to the students today about cotton candy and steak.
Yeah,
and
same idea.
Towards this idea that the first time you eat cotton candy, it's fine and it's there
Sure.
and done. But maybe the first time you eat steak, if that was your point, right? That
Yeah,
the more you eat
do I
cotton
even
candy-
have teeth to chew it with? I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Do I have the ability to, if I expect the steak to melt in my mouth the way cotton candy does, and it doesn't, do I spit it out? Do I reject it? You see what I mean?
Right.
So I think it's not just that we're missing out on steak, it's that we don't have the tools to be able to appreciate steak.
Yeah, to have the knowledge, to get to know. I find that students, as you know, my ninth and 10th graders, it's a musicianship class here at Geneva at the classical school that I teach at, but it's not really a choir, but we kind of do some choral reading through,
Yeah.
and reading through Renaissance music. At first listen, at the first taste, like they would taste cotton candy, they're not intrigued by Victoria's O Magnum Mysterium,
Right.
right?
Right.
Or his O Quam Gloriosum, All Saints text. They're not. But as soon as they start to sing it
Yeah.
and to hear the progressions,
Yeah.
they get to know it like they would a neighbor or like they would a family member that's
Right.
no longer, just seeing from 40 yards. Now it's in them, and
Yes.
then they love it because it actually has a knowledge of it. But
Right.
at first they would have
Right.
been like, ugh. And also they're used to the pop culture
Yeah.
that listening is done. Like, how does that make me feel? And so it requires a complete different orientation for them.
Right.
And I don't tell them, if they're listening to this, they might know this, but I don't tell them that's my goal, is
Yeah.
to
Yeah, sure.
rewire their thinking and to give them a taste for the good,
Yes.
and let it, let those harmonic progressions in O Magnum kind
Oh,
of
they're
do their thing.
marvelous. They're just marvelous. Well, yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? After you've worked on it a little while and you've learned how to sing it in tune with the other parts and you hear those progressions and so on, the interesting thing is you do find some pleasure in it,
Mm.
right? It's not that I only find pleasure in my popular music because I taste that, but now you're asking me to do something that is outside my comfort zone, sort of, and outside of my pleasure zone, as it were.
Right.
And but what happens is that same pleasure, maybe even a deeper kind of pleasure, comes from having heard and done O Magnum, and then they say, I can still listen to my pop music and enjoy it. That's
Right.
fine, but I also have this other experience that, and now I start looking for that in other
Mhm.
pieces.
Yeah.
What a joy
Yeah.
to expand their minds that way. What a
Yeah,
wonderful
the
thing.
ability for them to enjoy it in a real way.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the example of television. I mean, I would love to have the comparison and see what do you think of this. But if you watch the Food Network, I think the value of the Food Network and the reason the shows are popular in one sense is because most of the shows and the food, if you're watching Guy Fieri or whatever, is dives and drives, dinner dives, drive-ins, or whatever. I forget the show. All these things that he's showing, the reason that is valuable to people, enjoyable to people, is because they know that food.
Yes.
They have tasted a Philly cheesesteak
Uh-huh.
and they have a recollection of it, like you're
Right.
saying,
Right.
that then they can actually go listen to O Magnum and hear Voce Sate recording it because they've tasted O Magnum themselves.
Yeah.
Right. And the Food
Yeah.
Network,
Yeah.
those shows are popular not because you're watching maybe occasionally a food that you've never heard of or tasted, but more
Mhm.
often than not on there, it's something that you've tasted, you've prepared, you have a great quote unquote appreciation for
Right.
because you've dived into it. Right. To me, that's the whole model. And I think it's hidden in plain sight for us that we should do all the more of that.
Oh, yeah.
So that you can watch. There's nothing wrong with watching the Food Network and those, but I think the meaning and the value of it is precisely because you have tasted a wonderful juicy steak, or you've tasted a Philly cheesesteak, and you're like, this is unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. And now you're going to see it done by the experts,
Right.
like a great a cappella group like that or something. And you're because you've tried it yourself to do it, and you know how difficult it is to make a good whatever that is. Then now when you hear somebody who really does it well, you go, wow, that's
Yeah.
such a joy to hear. And not only that, I'm going to think about using that spice or that technique or that whatever it is in my own cooking or in my own performing,
Right.
and it gets multiplied.
Yeah. That's great. Well, you've been very generous to chat with me about these things and just
love
to
to do it.
let the conversation meander and pull threads. So if you're interested in finding out more about Maestro Hodges, John Mason Hodges is the director of the Center for Western Studies. He's also the music director and conductor currently for the Monroe Symphony Orchestra here in Northeast Louisiana. He's in his first year, and we're just delighted to have him involved and he's also on the faculty here for us at the Redeemer School of the Arts, where he's here finishing up his course on beauty
Aesthetics.
and meaning and
Yeah.
aesthetics, and all of the students have to take that. School of the Arts, you better have right thinking and some historical understanding of this important field. So, John, thanks for taking the time to chat with me today.
Always good to see you.
Great. Thanks a bunch.